Okay, Michael Brophy is a nationally known researcher, lecturer, and columnist. In addition to his studies at Suffolk University, UMass, and Boston University, Mr. Brophy is a certified private investigator and forensic genealogist. Among his many interesting projects, Michael has done research for one of my favorite shows, Who Do You Think You Are? In one episode, he traces the family history of actress Gwyneth Paltrow. Today's program will focus on Irish genealogy, not just because Thursday was St. Patrick's Day, but because the Public Records Office in Ireland no longer exists. So tracing your Irish roots can be a real challenge. But it can be done. And Michael has done it, and he will show us how to, show us how to begin. Okay, and so ladies and gentlemen, Michael Brophy.
Very good.
Hope I get it all right.
You got it. Very good. Excellent. Thank you, Karen. It's we don't need you. I'm going to put you down there. Thank you for attending here this morning in beautiful Eastham. I'm from the town of Abington, Mass., and we vacation on the Cape every year, South Shore type of folk that we are, from the South Shore of Boston. I'm married to an Irish citizen, so this is not just lectures that I give, but it is a way of life. Married to an Irish citizen. We have a daughter who therefore is eligible for Irish citizenship, and unfortunately my Irish ancestry goes way back, so I am the only member of my family who is not eligible for Irish citizenship. But I'm the guy who studies the Irish genealogy for a living here. So anyway, I notice most of you have a syllabus here. There is sort of a method to my madness here. I do have an outline, so you can sort of figure out where I am in my talk here. I do this on a sort of topical type basis, so if you care to take some notes, go right ahead, because you'll sort of see where I am in the topic here as well. And also, I did sort of haul in a cardboard box full of my books from my Irish library here on this table and this table. So afterwards, if you want to take a look, there's some really good background reading here. I might refer to a few of them during the course of my talk if they seem relevant or something comes to mind for me, genealogically speaking. And if you're looking for some reading material on your Irish genealogy or Irish history on a rainy April afternoon or something, then please go right ahead if I inspire you today, which hopefully I will do for each and every one of you, okay? So anyway, a little survey question to begin with here in our post-St. Patrick's Day parade mode here. How many of you here today think or know that you have Irish Catholic family history? Raise your hand. Okay, good part of the room here. How many of you think or know that you have Scots-Irish or Ulster Scot genealogy in your family history? Okay. Okay, good number, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, all right, majority Irish Catholic. So how many of you think you know that you have Anglican or Episcopal? Okay, oh wow, okay, good number, 4 or 5, 2 as well. Okay. How many others? Huguenots, Jews? Okay, all right, okay, 1, okay, all right. We can talk afterwards too. There's some Jews and Methodists and Huguenots, some other very small groups in Ireland as well, and religion is obviously key to studying your Irish genealogy, and it's no surprise that the majority of the room here is of Irish Catholic descent, since we are sort of, Boston-based area. If we were in other parts of the country, I get a different response. If we were down south or, out in Maine or New Hampshire, I might get a very different response. Okay, usually do. All right. So anyway, let's start off with probably the central event in Irish genealogy that Karen mentioned in her introduction here. And that is this event that occurred on June 30th, 1922. Many of you folks have traveled to Ireland. This is a complex called the Four Courts Complex in Dublin. That is the River Liffey right in front here. And on this date, June 30th, 1922, towards the end of the Irish Civil War, there were extreme factions of the Irish Republican Army that were held up in this building because they did not like the terms of the peace treaty that was signed that sort of divided Ireland in two, right? The 6 counties up north that still constitute Northern Ireland, and the 26 counties down south. That was signed between the Irish patriot Michael Collins, who you may have heard of from the Michael Collins movie of the mid-1990s starring Liam Neeson and Julia Roberts. And what happened here was that the Public Records Office was located in the basement of this building, and right next to them, the patriots, the so-called extreme factions of the IRA, were held up, stored their munitions in the room right next to the Public Records Office. And during the course of the fighting, towards the end of that week on June 30th, the munitions blew up, all right? And about 700 years worth of priceless Irish archives blew up on this day. Each side blamed the other for what happened on that day. And here's this sort of famous picture that was taken from down the River Liffey. If you've been there, if you've been to Ireland, upstream from here is O'Connell Street with the famous statue of Michael O'Connell, the Irish patriot. And downstream from here is the Guinness factory, where the Guinness is done. But loads and loads of Irish, priceless Irish archives were lost on this day. And you see that little puff of smoke in the upper right-hand corner of the picture there? That was your Irish ancestors' records. Just kidding. All right. So anyway, this is sort of a good news and bad news scenario here. So there's a myth out there that I've heard from these lectures over the years that the Irish were lousy record keepers. That is not the case. They were excellent record keepers. If you read the literature from beforehand, the records that the Irish kept are absolutely fabulous. And for the records that survive before this event, the records are absolutely fabulous. Okay? So what was lost? Well, let's get the bad news out of the way first. All right? Census returns that most British Isles countries kept, 1821, 31, 41, 51, censuses started to be kept early on in the 19th century. Those were all but lost, but not all of them. Early on in 21, and I believe the 31 census for County Armagh, which was up north, about half of those returns survived. They were checked out at the time during 1922. So if you think or know that you have census returns from County Armagh, then you might luck out and have an easier time of finding your folks there. And some of those are online at familysearch.org, which is the website for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, better known as the Mormons. For you folks who are of Anglican descent, there are 5 or 6 of you folks who answered here. 50% better than 50% of the Anglican parish registers, which are online at the representative church body library in Ireland, were lost. A lot of wills and testamentary records, again, which will affect you folks of Anglican descent, because they tended to be the more affluent part of Ireland, even though they were roughly 10-15% of the population, as well as a whole other records that were of less importance to genealogical researchers. All right? So that's the bad news. Let's talk about the good news. For all you Irish Catholics out here, existing Catholic Church sacramental records, mostly births, baptisms and marriages, okay? This is a country which is 80%, roughly 80% Catholic. So, you know, if you're a church and if you're Catholics who are openly hostile to the Protestant government here, you're not going to send your sacramental records to be stored in the Public Record Office in Dublin. So how much of the Catholic Church sacramental records were lost during this event? Absolutely none. Right? 20th century census returns, we're going to see some of these. There's a public census available in 1901 and 1911 for your newer immigrants that came here to the United States, and other places that are for free online, 1901 and 1911. Civil registration records, which started in the mid-19th century. What I mean by that are birth, marriage, and death records, sort of the building blocks that you've probably done here in this country, still survive. They weren't stored in the public record office at the Four Courts. A few 19th century census returns, I mentioned that, the 21 and the 31, I mean, great for Connie Armagh. And, 50% were lost of the Church of Ireland registers for you Anglicans out there, survived. It's a little bit under 50%, but, that's the good news, right? Okay. And lots more that we're going to talk about during the course of this talk, which is the fun part. There's, of course, challenges and expectations when we come forth for Irish history that has, with doing genealogy for the Irish ethnic group, that have more to do with Irish history and a few events that occurred along the way than this 1922 event. In the 16th century, the Tudor conquest occurred, and obviously whenever we have a suppressed people and a conquered people, then record keeping is going to be suppressed. If any of you folks have Greek heritage in your family tree, you'll know that the Greeks were suppressed by the Turks for centuries and centuries into the Ottoman Empire, so Greek heritage is hard to trace. I went to a talk a few years back and about African American genealogy, which I know very little about. And the speaker was talking about how it's incredibly difficult to trace African Americans in this country before the Civil War. Why? Because they were a suppressed people, right? There aren't any records of very few records of African Americans prior to the Civil War. I mean, they weren't even counted as a full person under the Constitution of the United States. So it seems to me that's a pattern throughout history. If there's a oppressed people, then the record keeping is going to be suppressed, and it's no different for the Irish. Okay. So again, if we study our Irish history here, and I've got a few books over here that you might want to look at if this piques your interest. 17th century, there's a guy named Oliver Cromwell who ruled England for a little while in between some of the British dynasties, who was fond of slaughtering Irish troops at the place called Drogheda after they surrendered. And that was sort of the beginning of the end, particularly for the Scots-Irish and Irish Catholics in Ireland. And William of Orange won the largest battle ever fought on Irish soil in 1690 at a place called the Battle of the Boyne, which sort of spelled the beginning of the end for Irish Catholics in 1690, the summer of 1690. So after this, something called the Penal Laws were enacted by Parliament, a series of laws that suppressed Catholics in particular from owning land, from voting. The Catholic lands were confiscated, and from practicing their religion. Okay, there was no place to train Catholic priests during that time period. So throughout the 18th century, 1700s, there's very little record keeping kept for Catholics during that time period. All right. To add on to this for everybody, we're talking Catholics, Protestants, anybody, Huguenots, any of the folks out there. There was a massive mistake made by the British for these four census returns in 1861 to 1891. The British practice was to keep 2 copies of their census returns, and the Irish kept 1. So for the war effort early on in the 20th century, the World War I war effort, the British pulped the Irish censuses for these 4 particular census returns. And it was a mistake made. So these 4 census returns were 100% and completely destroyed by the British government for these 4 census returns. So if you can imagine, if the census returns, if we didn't have these for the U.S., right, how difficult that would be for our genealogical research. And these 4 census returns are 100% totally gone. Okay, there's not a trace of them left. And it was due to a bureaucratic screw-up, for lack of a better word. Right? So anyway, here's the good news here. In 1829, there was something called the Catholic Emancipation Act. The penal laws were very difficult to enforce on a local level due to these rowdy Catholics and Irish Catholics and disobedient Irish Catholics. And Catholics were free to practice their religion, and much of the record keeping sort of began and began to ramp up just prior to the Great Irish Potato Famine, which started in 1845. Okay? There were a lot of European populist movements that started to occur in this time, around 1848 and all. So there was, you remember that from your European history from way back when as well. So it was a time of growing populism, growing freedom in Europe during that particular time period. Okay? So, a key to doing Irish genealogy, too, is to look at names and to look at surnames. It's a key research strategy, a key methodology for looking and doing names in Irish genealogy. If you go into any Irish pub, the Irish pub of Cape Cod or any of these sorts of things, you'll see these maps here all around Ireland, and you'll see certain surnames here. And it's kind of an interesting methodology here, because this is predominantly a rural country, right? I mean, there are cities, of course, in Ireland. If you've been there, you've seen them there. And the methodology around this is that the surnames stayed pretty static around Ireland throughout the centuries, right? I mean, people married one another through arranged marriage or otherwise, and people stayed on the land for generations and generations to farm the land. So there was a fellow by the name of John Grenham who studied a tax list that I'm going to go over in a little bit called Griffith's Valuation. And they came up with a list based on these census returns and all as to what the top 10 lists of the most common surnames were in 19th century Ireland. This was based on census data. And here were the top 10 that came up during the course of these studies. Anybody here have Murphys, Kellys, or Sullivans in their family tree? A few. I wish you the best of luck. Okay. Obviously, they are we all know Murphys, Kellys, or Sullivans. I mean, think about friends of yours. Think about folks from your high school class. Think about your friends and neighbors around you. Everybody knows a Murphy, a Kelly, or a Sullivan. All right. Smith, for you Scots-Irish out here, that's a Northern Ireland name where a lot of the Scots-Irish and the Ulster Scots came from. Everybody around here knows an O'Brien. Ryan is a Tipperary name, okay, from County Tipperary. I mean, 90% of the Ryans come from County Tipperary. And O'Neill, comes from the Middle Ages in Ireland. It's one of the original clan tribes, I believe, from the west of Ireland. Not sure. Okay. When it comes to given names, again, leveraging these names and being knowledgeable about names, and doing your research around names, based on census data and the like, these are the top 6 given names in 19th century Ireland for both sexes. And when doing your research, we have to look at different variations of these names as well. When we're looking at our Johns, we have to sort of look at variations too. I mean, John could be Jack, right? I mean, Jack Kennedy, right? Could be Johnny, or Owen, or Sean. James could be Jacob, or Jimmy, or Seamus, right? Patrick could be Patty, or Pat, or Paddy, or Padrique, right? On the female side, anybody know an Irish girl named Mary? Okay. It could be Amora. I'm married to Amora. That's my wife. It could be a Maureen, a May, Mariah, Molly, or Polly. Anne could be Anne with one A, without the E. Margaret could be Peg, Madge, or Maggie, or Kate, or Cassie, or Kitty. So all of these different names, we sort of have to be imaginative when we're looking through online databases and microfilm and published sources that are over here and here when looking through our Irish heritage, okay? And due to a naming pattern that I'm going to talk about in a second here, these names get recycled quite a bit as well. And in 19th century Ireland, these are 60% of the given names given in Ireland. All right, so there's not a great deal of variation. We'd like to have more variation, but there's, due to this ethnic group and due to the religion, there's not a wonderful degree of variation that we see in other ethnic groups due to different other naming patterns, like French and Swedes have different naming patterns. All right. So here's the naming pattern. You may have seen this before. For sons, the first son is named after grandpa, right? The second son is named after mother's father. The third son is named after dad. The first daughter is named after the mother's mother. Second daughter is named after the father's mother. The third son is named after the mother. Okay? This is something that was very common back in the 19th century, early on in the 20th century in Ireland. I mean, we don't see this today, right? I mean, your kids, did you do this for your kids? No. It wasn't done in my family, okay? You'll see this done in Italian families. You'll see this done in Scot families. And it's also not common if a child dies in infancy to see the next child born of the same sex to reuse that name as well. You'll see that during the course of your research. All right. So to drive this point home, here's the family tree of probably the most famous Irish family of all, of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. All right. So here's his father, Joseph Patrick Kennedy, the ambassador to England around World War II. Here's John Francis Fitzgerald. He was the former mayor of Boston. This is the father of Rose Kennedy. And if we go all the way back in the family tree on the paternal side of Jack Kennedy, he's got a Murphy, way back when. And here we have Bridget Murphy, born 1821, probably in Owenduff, and they say probably, in County Wexford in Ireland, died in 1888. He's got a Hickey there, probably from County Clare, died in 1900. And that's as far back as it can go. And some of the best researchers in Ireland have been working on this tree for years. All right? Now, why is it that these researchers, fabulous researchers, can only go back to 1821? They can't even go back to the American Revolution, 1776. Anybody got a guess? They destroyed records. And what else? This is a Catholic family. Suppressed by what? Penal laws. Yeah. All right. Going on the maternal side of JFK, he's got Rosanna Cox, 1835 in County Cavan, and he's got a Hannon in Limerick in Ireland, right? In this Catholic family. Right? Here's another tool. I think it's a wonderful tool that this fellow by the name of John Grenham, whom in my view wrote the absolute Bible on Irish Catholic, not just Irish Catholic, but Irish genealogy. It's called Tracing Your Irish Ancestors. He's working in Dublin. He's, to me, the best Irish genealogist on the planet. Met him several times. His Tracing Your Irish Ancestors, it's now in its 4th edition. I've got the 3rd edition is right there. And to me, any serious Irish genealogist owns this book, right? And he came up with a tool that, using Griffith's valuation, listed the distribution of surnames in Ireland as to where they fall, and he sort of crossed it with surnames as to down to the parish level to see where the surnames cross, to see where they where you can sort of cross two surnames and as to where they fall down to the parish level in Ireland. I'll demonstrate this in a minute using a very famous Irish American who you might recognize. Who's this? Grace Kelly, okay. For those of you who don't know who Grace Kelly was, she's a fabulous movie star, starred in some Alfred Hitchcock movies, 1950s, married a prince in Monaco in the late 1950s, died tragically in a car accident, I believe, in 1980 or so, something like that. And obviously one of the most beautiful women ever to walk the planet. And she was from a Philadelphia family. She was originally from Philadelphia, and her grandparents were from Ireland, okay? And using Mr. Grenham's tool, obviously we're going to look at the distribution of the Kelly name throughout Ireland. And we learned a few minutes ago, looking at the number of households in Griffith's valuation, which did the distribution in the mid-19th century of Ireland, we see that the Kelly, which is of course, that second most popular name, has a ton of names in just about every county in the four largest cities in Ireland. 986 in Galway, 815 in Roscommon. Huge numbers. Not much help, right, for sort of tracking down where Grace Kelly's grandfather was from. 595 in County Mayo in the west of Ireland. However, we know that Grace Kelly's grandmother was a Costello, right? A little bit better. Galway, 194, County Galway. Mayo is 126, all right? So through his software, we can sort of see where they cross and get it right down to the parish level here, and it says that down to the parish level that that these crossed in Antrim. There's look at that, in Belfast City, there's 122 Kellys and one Costello. And in Mayo, there's a bunch too. Look at this, in Mayo, in Kilcuman, there are 4 Kellys and 8 Costellos. So this is a nice tool for sort of, zeroing in your research into a certain area if you have no idea in Ireland where they're from, if you don't have any of the records on this side of the pond. So using records in this family, other records that we're going to talk about in a little bit, we find that the Kelly family was from the place called Borrishoole Friary. It's a parish in County Mayo in Ireland. All right. Now this tool in and of itself is not proof that they were from this particular parish in Ireland, but it gives you a hint as to where to start your research. It's a nice tool, right? And this is on the Irish Times website. It's a pay site. It's in your syllabus under the Ancestors tab on the Irish Times website, all right? And again, this is using this and using the power of surnames. I call it leveraging the surnames of Ireland to sort of zero in when you have to deal with, say, a Murphy, a Kelly, or a Sullivan, all right? Here's one from my family tree. I'm a Greenan on my father's side. And look at this. I'll go back a little bit here. You see the list here. If you just scan this list here, there's 17 in County Leitrim, and in Monaghan there are 57, all right? I did some research on Prince Edward Island. where my Greenans are from, and in Summerside, Prince Edward Island, it seems like every other mailbox is a Greenan. And I was able to use other records and trace them, right back to County Monaghan. It was a piece of cake, right? So say a little prayer that you have Greenans in your family tree rather than Kellys, Murphys, or Sullivans, right? Which leads me right to methodology as to what you need to do for methodology. And might be the most important section of this whole talk. This will save you a lot of pain, heartache, and time when conducting your Irish research, all right? And a key for doing genealogy with Irish ethnic groups and any others is to keep a wide focus, okay? Whenever doing genealogy, everybody runs into brick walls. We sort of work our way back methodically to our great-grandparents and then our great-great-grandparents, and then all of a sudden we hit a brick wall. And we sort of stop and go, oh my God, where do I go from here? And a key piece of methodology is to study the people around your ancestor. This is what's called the fan principle, and that means studying the friends, the associates, and the neighbors of your ancestor. Some people call it cluster research or cluster research. And that means when you're looking at the ancestor, your sort of last ancestor that you're able to get back to, is to study the people around them, meaning who witnessed the baptism, who are the people who witnessed the baptism. Study the people who witnessed the naturalization of your ancestor. Study the neighbors. If it's a rural ancestor, the people who were the neighbors of your ancestor might be relatives to them. Those sorts of things, okay? And study them like you would your own ancestor, because it's a good chance that they might be relatives and your ancestor might show up in their records. And then you can build context, and you'll see the bigger picture as to how they all fit together, right? And it also keeps you busy, and you can study more ancestors, right? A key thing also to do is cite all your sources. Back when I was in school, my teachers always taught me to, when you're citing statistics, that this person, if you're citing in a book report or whatever, to tell us where you're getting your information, right? If you're going to say to your family, and I hope you're going to share your research someday with whoever, if you're going to cite that this ancestor was born then or married this person or died in this person, tell us where you get the information. It's going to add credibility to your research, and hopefully that can be duplicated someday and expanded upon by somebody else, right? Many, many family histories just have it all written out, and we don't know where the research came from or whether it's valid or not. Okay? Also, when we're doing Irish research, start here and then go to your Irish resources. Go to your Irish sources first. Study everything that you can about your Irish ancestor, that immigrant ancestor who came over here through Canada. If they came through Canada or they came through New York or Boston or wherever. Before you head over to that BC football game, when they're playing in Ireland in September or something, okay, that's going to save you an awful lot of money and time and heartache, because that's the number one mistake that a lot of people make, is they go over and they do their research in Ireland and they spend all this money on Aer Lingus and expensive hotels in Belfast, and they don't even know the county as to where their ancestor is from, and it turns out to be a wasted trip. Okay, and also if you can, leverage those non-common surnames. Leverage your Costellos and your Greenans if you're looking for some shortcuts, if possible. If you get stuck on your Murphys, your Cullys, and your Sullivans, and your O'Neills, and your Walshes. All right. And also, maybe it's worthy of prayer to a little bit of luck of the Irish. Talk to your minister or your priest about that. I can't talk to you about that. Okay. So anyway, here we go to the fun stuff. All right. Sources of origin on stateside, okay? Here's the journey. Here's the fun part of genealogy. Here's where the addiction is. All right? For Irish or any other ethnic group, we're talking Swedish, Polish, French, probably the number one source that folks look for is the petition for naturalization. If we're talking Irish, Irish became U.S. citizens in big numbers. The sort of dirty little secret of American immigration is that most immigrants came over here and then they went back, but not the Irish. Because, what did the Irish have to go back to? Not much. It's just a poor rural country, abject poverty for the most part. So here we have the petition for naturalization. We have Patrick Murphy. He is going to court in Boston, and he says, I want to become a naturalized citizen, Judge. And he is going on to the Ivernia, traveling on the Ivernia. Everybody wants to know the ship that he came over on. And he's being a good Irish Catholic here. He's got 5 kids. One of them's name is Mary. She's born in 1911. John, Anna, Helen, and Charles. They all live in Roxbury, good Irish enclave back then. And I didn't highlight this, but right here, he is saying that he is from County Fermanagh, up north, all right, as to where he was born. And we've got nice birth information on here, so we can start looking at Irish resources, all right? And that's coming right from the horse's mouth, all right? Oh, I did highlight it. I'm sorry. I forgot. County Fermanagh. Okay. If we head into the cemeteries, loads and loads of Irish immigrants, common practice to look at the gravestones and mark where they came from. Sacred to my memory of my daughter, Mary Ann Ricker, who died November 23rd, 1882, aged 29 years, 3 months, 22 days. She was a native of County Roscommon, Ireland. She was a kind and dutiful daughter, a good and faithful wife, and a loving mother. May her soul rest in peace. Amen. That is from Calvary Cemetery in Boston. And that was given to me by a great Irish genealogist, friend of mine, Andrew Pierce, in a book he published. And I think I may have brought that here, maybe I didn't. Okay. Vital records here. Okay. U.S. vital records, list the birthplace. Don't get your expectations up on this. 99% of them say that they were born in Ireland. Not going to be much help, all right? But I've seen a few here and there, a couple in my own family actually, that list a more precise place name as to where they were in Ireland. This is right out of the Vital Records office in Boston. 29 Rose Street in Auburndale, that's a section of Newton. Here we have James Joseph Shaughnessy. And right on the death certificate, Dad's name was Michael Shaughnessy from County Clare, and Mary McNamara from County Clare. All right? Okay. So God bless that clerk in Newton, Massachusetts, right? For asking the question, and somebody gave the answer, and there you go. All right? Fabulous. Passenger lists. Information from both sides of the ocean. Okay. Wonderful pictures of the ships available. This example, 19th century. As we go further back in the 19th century, there's going to be smaller information available. 1820 is sort of the magic date as to when the U.S. government required the shipping companies to keep passenger lists. Before then, it's a little bit sketchy. Then it becomes the province of the custom houses to for passenger lists. And as far as the stories go, do take those with a grain of salt. We are of Irish heritage here, and it is St. Patrick's Day, so do take the stories and exaggerate them if you like, right? I mean, my dad once told me that you never let the truth get in the way of a good story, right? But this is a passenger list that I got off of Ancestry.com, which I understand is for free at the library here, I was told. So absolutely fabulous database that has loads and loads of Irish databases. Do check out the card catalog at Ancestry here, because they just put on Irish Catholic registers on here, and you can access them for free. If you go get it at home, then you're going to pay at least $300 a year for Ancestry. So this one here is from a passenger list from the SS Lusitania. Anybody ever heard of this ship? Yeah. All right. Helped us get into World War I. And here we have two young ladies that we're interested in, Nora Cronin and Mary Cronin, 24 and 23 years of age. This says the complete address of the nearest relative or friend and the country from whence you came. And they are saying they are from Ballingarry in County Cork, and their father is Cols Cronin. That's for the first young lady, and the second one is Ballingarry, County Cork, so we've got a nice place name as to where they're from. And this is the second side of this manifest. Whether going to join a friend or relative, friend and complete address. And they're going to 24 Melrose Street in Boston. Right? So we've got, we can go into, say, a Boston City directory in 1915, find out who's living there. And then we could sort of get that connection across the ocean. Okay? Place of birth, county, city, or town. And then we got Ireland, Ballingarry again. All right? So we've got a nice connection here. So I would take these 24, 23-year-old young ladies in 1915. I'd start looking for some records over in Ireland that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes as to find out who their parents are. Right. A few folks of Scots-Irish ancestry who came over earlier. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later. There were all kinds of great county histories written around the centennial of the country, 1876, about and many Scots-Irish are over in this country here. And here's a history of Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, huge Scots-Irish area, the Carolinas, as well as through Georgia and Virginia in the back country where the Scots-Irish settled, as well as in Maine and New Hampshire. Worcester, Massachusetts, big Scots-Irish town. Worcester was founded by the Scots-Irish. These county histories that are in genealogical libraries. Andrew Ralston, authentic information points to the fact that the person settled as the Big Spring either in Newton or Pennsboro Township in 1728. Ralston was a native of County Armagh, Ireland, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, a published source here. Here's another database on Ancestry.com. These are passport applications here. Here's Mary Finnegan, swears that she was born in the county of Limerick in Ireland on about December of 1835. And she's the wife of Patrick Finnegan, who is a naturalized American citizen. And this is down in Louisiana in the parish of New Orleans. Few folks who think or know that maybe your Irish came in through New York, the port of New York, which I hate to say it, but being a Bostonian and a Red Sox fan, we sort of take pride that this is the most Irish city in the U.S. As far as numbers go, it's not. New York had the most Irish come through it, I'm sorry to say, but it's a fact. But here we have Michael Ryan. He's a waiter. And this is an application for a bank. This is the New York Immigrant Savings Bank, right? So if I'm an Irishman, I'm not going to put my money in where all the Yankees are keeping their money. I'm going to put it in where the Immigrant Savings Bank, right? So this is a database on Ancestry.com, and he's telling us that he is from Nomah in County Tipperary in Ireland. Right? And there's a similar source to it that's in manuscript form at Boston College for the Boston Irish. There was a place called the Union Savings Bank for the Boston Irish that covers a great time span. It's not online, but it's at the Burns Library in Boston. Published material, we just saw one for the Scots-Irish on county histories, or the county mug books as they are called, where lots and lots of Scots-Irish are. Tons and tons and tons of stuff. I've got some stuff here for the Irish who came in through Canada. There's this thing called Aaron's Sons that talks about the Irish who came through Canada, the so-called two-boat Irish, who came through Canada because it was cheaper for them to export the Irish through Canada because it was still part of the British Empire at the time of the Great Famine than to ship them to the United States because it was, quote, a foreign country at the time. But this retired school teacher by the name of Terry Punch compiled from all kinds of Canadian sources lists of Irish immigrants coming through Canada, through all of Atlantic Canada, and I've got 4 of his volumes over here. If you think that your folks came through Canada, take a look at it afterwards. Obviously, most of the original sources that we're talking about carry the most weight. So if it's my ancestor and I want to be really sure about it, I'm going to get to the primary source of the material. I mean, we are genealogists. We deal with primary source material because obviously we want to get certain things can get lost in translation. There's an absolutely fabulous source out there it's called the O'Keefe Coshmong Slieve Longur in the Upper Blackwater in Ireland. This is for you folks who think or know that you might have ancestry in County Cork or Kerry, which is down south. This was done by a pathologist by the name of Albert Casey in the 1950s and 1960s, and he compiled this 16-volume work from newspapers, vital records, all kinds of different sources, and he was, which is where his ancestry was from, and he compiled it so that he could compile data for blood diseases. He's a bit of an odd character, and it's a little bit difficult to use, but any comprehensive genealogical library will have this work. And I believe a lot of this work is online at Family Search. But this title here, that took me a long time to pronounce, by the way. I've given this lecture a lot, but this title name refers to that area of Cork and Kerry, eastern Kerry and western Cork, northwestern Cork, where his ancestry is from, where the records are where he compiled these records, and he's done a fabulous job. And also, there was a guy named Albert, forget his first name. His name is Hayes, and he was the curator of the National Library of Ireland. And after the 1922 event, he compiled manuscripts, a manuscript guide called the Hayes Guide to Manuscript Sources for Irish Civilization, and published it in, again, a 10, 15-volume work. Went around to all kinds of libraries in Ireland, mostly Ireland and throughout the world, with a guide to all kinds of manuscript sources for Irish genealogy and Irish history. And this is published in book form in 1965 by a Boston publisher. It contains, in the book form, at least 125,000 entries, and it's indexed by person, place, and one other index guide, and it is absolutely essential for any comprehensive research plan into Irish genealogy. It has since been put online at the National Library of Ireland site under something called sources, and I believe I put that in your syllabus material. And to me, if you're going over to Ireland and you're going to be researching a comprehensive family history and you don't consult sources beforehand when you're getting on the plane, then you should be sued for genealogical malpractice. I don't know how I could do that to you, but if you know of somebody who doesn't consult sources beforehand, then send me an email. I'll figure out some way of hunting them down. Okay. I'm going to skip this one. Another piece of methodology that I think is very important with Irish genealogy is to know about administrative and religious boundaries. And some of these are like the U.S. and others are not. Let me give you an example just so we can gain a sense of place in Ireland. We are here in the town of Eastham, Massachusetts, in the county of Barnstable. Correct me if I am wrong. And we are in a section of Massachusetts called Cape Cod, right? Sort of a beautiful section of Cape Cod in the county of Barnstable, in the state of Massachusetts that has a governor and elected representatives and all, in a region of the United States of America called New England, right? That doesn't really have any governing body, correct? New England constitutes 6 states, correct? All right. And the town of Eastham consists of, I think, 5 selectmen who probably meet here, right, in this room. Probably a school committee that maybe meets in this room. Okay. And religiously speaking, if you're a Catholic, this is probably a part of the Archdiocese of Fall River. Is that correct? All right. And if you're of the Episcopal Church, is this a part of the Episcopal Diocese of Fall River? Anybody know? I'm not an Episcopal. Okay, well, let's say the Episcopal Church is divided into the Episcopal Diocese of Fall River. Okay, so anyway, those are the divisions, sort of the civil and religious divisions. If you live in Eastham, Massachusetts, all right? Okay. In Ireland, they are like that, and they are not like that. Okay, there's some commonality to it, and there are not some commonality to it. All right. In Ireland, there are 4 provinces. Okay, there's Ulster up north, where all the political problems have been occurring over the last 40 or 50 years. There's Munster down south. There's Leinster in the east. There's Connaught in the west. That is sort of analogous to New England. It's just sort of regions of Ireland. There are counties, 26 in the lower, that's the Republic of Ireland, and there's 6 in the upper part of the country. That is the, quote, Northern Ireland that is still part of the United Kingdom. Okay, I think that's probably what most people know about Ireland as the county. I liken that to the states, right? We are a part of 50 states of the United States of America, right? That's sort of the way it is. Baronies you'll see during the course of Irish research, and there's really no analogous governmental administrative division. That's left over from Norman times, back in the Middle Ages, right? Parishes, there's obviously 2,508 parishes, civil parishes, which are the same as the Church of Ireland parishes, as far as religious parishes go. I think we can understand that from a religious standpoint, if you happen to belong to the Anglican Church. A poor law union is, these came into being in 1838 to relieve the destitute poor of Ireland. These were districts set up for soup kitchens and the like, because it was such a poor country. These are still used today to set up electoral divisions for voting in Ireland. So the town of Eastham, when you folks go to vote, you probably go to different schools or whatever here, or you go right here to vote. Okay, they go to the different poor law union divisions, electoral divisions and the like throughout Ireland, which were originally set up for poor law unions, the original poor law divisions in Ireland. All right, so that's sort of the analogy there. Okay. The townland, which is the same thing as the poor law unions, is sort of analogous to a neighborhood nowadays, all right? So if we are here in Eastham, all right, which I know I've been years since I've been here, all right, but I'm sure in the town of Eastham, there's sort of this neighborhood and that neighborhood by the water or by this whatever, you know, that's kind of a neighborhood, all right? And a probate district, and again, this is for you folks of Anglican ancestry, mostly you Catholics, you know, there aren't too many Catholic probate districts. It's for wills and testamentary records, that sort of thing, for tracking down wills and the like. Here in Massachusetts, there are 14, it's done by the county level. So if you want to track down a will, then you would head over to Route 6A to the court complex in the probate district. Okay, in Ireland, they just divide it into 11 sections of the island, and that's where you get a probate. Okay. Roman Catholic parishes in Ireland, same thing here, you know, the diocese level. This is the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fall River. There's the Irish Catholic Diocese of Boston. For you Presbyterians, it's very small, divided into synods. And of course, the Diocese of Anglican and Catholic is just a larger division of parishes. Okay? So is that clear as mud? Okay? Very, very important methodology when you're looking at Irish Catholic records, Irish Anglican records, Presbyterian records. Right? So let's take a look at some of the Irish records. Okay? Some key dates here that have to be known when you're looking at vital records, again on the civil level, is that registration of non-Catholic marriages started in 1845. Civil registration for everybody, including Catholics, started in 1864. And loads of Irish went over to England, and that started a little bit earlier in 1837. So those are the three sort of big key dates that we all have to know about. And in all cases, early on in the early years, like any sort of government bureaucracy, it's going to take a while for things to get going. So, you know, on January 1 of these years, you know, records didn't obviously all magically appear. It sort of takes things to ramp up. It takes time to ramp up. So here's just an example of a death in the district, you know, the electoral district of Bainbridge, in the union, or the poor law union of Bainbridge. And this is in the county of Down, in the upper right-hand corner. That's up north, up in the province of Ulster. Okay? So here we have a Thomas McClarney, 84 years. He's an Army pensioner. I got this out of a Civil War pension file. And he is, the informant on this is John Burns, nephew of the deceased, that caused the body to be buried. And he's talking about his residence is in Ballilia, and talks about his marital condition, sex, and all that. Here's an example of one from the Church of Ireland. Oops, excuse me. This is in the parish of Bray in the county of Wicklow. Again, talks about 1890, the bride and groom. Their age is full, meaning they're over the age of 18. Their condition, bachelor, and she's a spinster, which is kind of a pejorative term, right? But it's, I mean, nowadays that doesn't play well. I mean, you know, you could be 19 and be a spinster. You know, it's just, that's the way it was. Yeah. And it gives the father's name. It doesn't, you know, doesn't give well. But obviously, you know, religion is the key here, and they're talking about that this is the rites and ceremonies of the Church of Ireland. So for this one, I'd be heading to the representative church body library in Ireland to gain the church record of this, the church version of this. It might have different information. One website that's in your packet here is the irishroots.ie website. This was a fabulous website that's not complete, but does give online versions of some baptismal records as well as some civil records. Here's one of my ancestors from the townland of Fresh Ford in County Kilkenny down south. Again, it gives the denomination of Roman Catholic. And again, at the bottom there, you can see some of the witnesses there of Catherine Keeley and William Wright. I mentioned a minute ago that we want to talk about the people around them, keeping a wide focus as far as methodology goes. Those are people of interest to me. As far as vital records go as well, Family Search, again, this is the website of the Mormons as well. If we go down to the bottom here and look at the index here as well, these are the civil registration indices. These aren't the records themselves, but 1845 to 1958, they've put the indexes of 23 million records online from the start of civil registration in 1845 all the way up to 1958. And you can order these online rather than go all the way to Ireland, and they'll cost you about $15 each. Easy. Don't have to go to Ireland. All right. A few other things here. Some other Irish records accessible here. This is the Irish census. I mentioned a while ago that not all of the Irish censuses are gone. There's the 1901 and 1911. Here's the 1901 census of a Roman Catholic family, of Bridget McKenna. And they're listing Roman Catholic of whether they can read and write with their ages. And also their marital condition in County Clare. And the one thing I like about the Irish census versus the U.S. ones is that they put one family per page. You know, when you use the U.S. ones that you see on Ancestry, they sort of wrap one family onto the next page. So it's more convenient that way. So.
You can see if they spoke Irish or not.
Yes, true. Yeah, the Irish language too. Here's one, again, just the McDade family. Roman Catholic, read and write. Again, their ages. This is their marital condition, their sex, and this is from up north in County Tyrone and Ulster. Again, their language that they spoke as well. Here's a family, a very famous one, Eamon de Valera, the former President of Ireland, an Irish patriot from 1911. He is the head of the family. He's a Catholic. He's got a servant in there. He's reading and writing. His wife is Sinead. She's 32 in 1911. And it lists his occupation. It also lists the number of children that were born to a woman and how many are still alive. So if that number is different, of course, I'm going to be looking for a death certificate. All right? And it's interesting, this is the 100th year anniversary of the Easter Uprising in Ireland now. So, and that's occurring like in another week or two, so there should be something, even in the mainstream press, I would think, about what they're doing to celebrate that now, or not celebrate it, but commemorate it, I guess, depending on your viewpoint. My understanding from my history is that De Valera he was captured in that event, and because he was born in New York, as it says right on the census returns, that's the reason why he wasn't put to death by the British during that event. Okay. I mentioned a while ago that we have census substitutes to look at from a genealogical standpoint due to the loss of census material in 19th century Ireland, and there are two of them that are compiled in something called the Householders' Index. And they are called Griffith's Valuation and the Tithe Allotments. So this is a nice little compilation of these two census substitutes, and they're very useful for sort of putting things side by side and when a surname is common in a parish for any given county. So do look online at Ancestry.com. I believe that they have it online at Ancestry.com. The first one, of course, is the famous one, Griffith's valuation. This very pleasant-looking fellow here in the picture is Mr. Richard Griffith. He was an absolute bear to work for, from what the historic record says, but he was very thorough in his work. And what his valuation was doing was basically was a tax list in the middle of the 19th century that he compiled basically between 1847 and 1864 for valuing any land and all land in Ireland. It had a lot of fits and starts to it, but it's the only detailed guide of residences in all of the 19th century Ireland. It was never meant to be something for genealogical use. Never meant to be a census substitute, and once again it was useful for a common surname. All right? Widely available on the internet. It's probably listed in 6 or 7 websites that I listed in your handout. Okay? Here's an example of tenements, just the published version of it. This is in the townland of, and it goes all the way down to the townland, by the way. And when I talked about administrative divisions on the civil side a few minutes ago, this goes all the way down to the townland. And there are 64,000 townlands, which I made the analogy to neighborhoods in the town of Eastham, and that equals success, by the way, in Irish genealogy. If you can get down to the townland in Ireland, then bango, you've got it, all right? And there is, by the way, in a townland, there is no board of selectmen, okay, there's no sort of governing body, there is no school committee that sort of meets for a townland in Ireland, all right? The government is not, it's not that way for government in Ireland. So here we have in Griffith's valuation, this is the townland of Purcell Cinch, and here we have the tenant here. It only lists the head of household of Joseph Wright, and here we have the British landlord of W. Carnesborough Esquire. That is the British landlord, right? During the 16th and 17th century, the British confiscated Catholic lands. Okay, this is more than likely a Catholic example. And it lists the land, the office, the land, and all that. And it's going to list the tax. This is a tax list. So it's listing the land or the buildings or whatever in acres, roods, and perches. That's the division. And then it's going to list the tax in pounds, shillings, and pence. All right? And it's listing the tax for the land and the buildings, and then the total. All right? Okay. Here's another example. Just to take a look at this example quickly here. This is in the townland of Bahena. And what was really detailed, nicely done about with Griffith's Valuators here, is we have, if you take a look at this closely, you've got Patrick Walsh, there are those Walshes again, and you've got Patrick Walsh, he's at the top there, and then you've got another Patrick Walsh about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, and it says JAS and NED, all right? So they're differentiating between these two, and that is Patrick the son of James and Patrick the son of Ned, right? So we've sort of got them differentiated between the land, right? And it also refers to a map which accompanies a lot of the Griffith's valuation stuff that the valuators used, that accompanied the valuators when they were doing this stuff from the Ordnance Survey maps that the British military created. So you can actually go in and use the maps and sort of zero in right on the land of your ancestor. That is really cool. Okay. There are tons and tons of manuscripts that I'm not going to get into any detail on, but if you go to the valuation office in Dublin, here's one in which they sort of crossed them out. These are the original manuscripts that they used. Here's one for Michael Driscoll that they're listing here, and there's the landlord on the right, and Michael Driscoll's name is crossed out. This is a later valuation map. Again, they're keeping these by hand, and it's crossed out, and Ann Driscoll is listed there. What do you think happened to Michael? Why is the name crossed out? Died, or maybe he immigrated. All right. So what's really interesting is if you go into the valuation office in Ireland, it's written in different pen, and these valuation books go all the way up well into the 20th century, up until like the 1960s, and you see them sort of crossed off in different colored pen, in these hard books. Right? So if you really get inspired and really get obsessed, sick people like me, then you can go into Ireland and do this sort of work. Okay. For the generation before Griffith's valuation, okay, Griffith's is for the 47 through the 60s, there's the tithe allotments. Okay. This was 1823 to 1838, and these were tithes paid to the Church of Ireland. Again, the ruling church, the Anglican church, the equivalent is the Episcopal church here, tithes paid, biblical tithing paid to the Church of Ireland. And again, due to the loss of the 21, 31, and 41 censuses in the 1922 destruction, this is the only countrywide survey of the island at the time. So we're looking at basic information about these folks. I'll show an example in a minute. And these were not popular, of course, with Catholics in particular, and because if you're a Catholic and you're paying a tithe to a Protestant church, you could imagine how well that went over with Catholics. So in 1831, there was an actual tithe war, and there were tithe defaulter lists that were listed on there. So it's incomplete. The rural areas are better than the urban areas on here, and it lists only properties for 1 acre and above on here. So, of course, that's why the urban areas weren't even counted a good amount of the time. So here we have, again, an example of an original manuscript with the tenant listed here. And again, acres, roods, and perches with the tax listed. And of course, it's great too if you can have your remarks on here with the form of building off to the side here. If you're lucky enough to see these folks in original manuscript form, then there you have it. And just recently, I had to add this in, that they have been put online at the National Archives of Ireland site on here as well. The tithe allotments. And again, it explains the tithe allotments here, that they were completed 1823 to 1837. Agricultural holdings of over 1 acre had to pay tithes to the Church of Ireland, the main Protestant church.
Would there be multiple records for different years during that period of time for the same place?
It was done just in, I believe it was just done in one survey. It wasn't as comprehensive as Griffith's, but it was done in one survey.
So they spent, 15 years, and each place was only evaluated?
Yeah, I believe they started at the top of the island and then went south.
So did
the
they
tithes.
pay a tithe once during that period of time, or did they pay it, yearly, whatever?
I'm not quite sure. I'm not too sure about that. Okay. So here's the online version here. If we click here to search, then here's your search box where you put in a surname and a forename, and search the online, and you'll get some nice original versions here in the National Archives of Ireland site. Okay. A few words about the Scots-Irish, for you Ulster Scots folks in particular. Most of you folks are Presbyterians, if not all, and there's a certain methodology here for Presbyterians in particular. I'm a professional genealogist. I am an armchair historian, but it has to, obviously we need to know about history as well. And the Ulster Scots came mostly from the north in Ulster, and they came over as Revolutionary War heroes. There were 4 distinct migrations from Northern Ireland due to the collapse of the linen trade, as well as increases in rent throughout 18th century Ireland, and including heroes like Andrew Jackson and other great Buchanans and MacDonalds and all kinds of other great Irish Scots folks over there. And President Washington credited the Ulster Scots with help winning the Revolutionary War, and our country may have looked a lot different if it weren't for these folks winning the Revolution. I did bring a book, which is right there, how the Irish helped win the American Revolution, which is right over there, if you want to take a look at that. Once again, 18th century pioneers, although most Scots-Irish came after the Revolution as far as pure numbers go. They tended to come in groups. They followed the minister. So if you are having trouble finding your Scots-Irish pioneer, do follow the minister. It's a key piece of methodology that a lot of the times they came and followed the minister over. So if you can track down that Presbyterian church, whether it be in northern New England or in larger numbers down south in Virginia and South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and the backcountry, if you know something about the minister, then that might be able to give you an Irish origin for those folks back home. So that is my key there as well. The chief leading source on that is something called the Fasti of the Presbyterian Church, which I've been trying to get for years on Amazon and all, but it costs like a couple $100 a piece. It's an incredibly rare book, but it is on microfilm at the Family History Library. It's sort of on my Amazon wish list. If it comes up for reasonable money, I'll buy it. So that's what I've got on Irish genealogy. And I love questions.
I'm interested in going with 2 names, Murphy, oh, I'm sorry,
No, I'll get getting you next, but you first, ma'am.
Murphy and McSweeney.
McSweeney, I have an Uncle Charlie McSweeney.
No, we have Timothy.
Timothy McSweeney. He was part of the good part of the family.
Okay, this is from Rossmore, outside of Clonakilty.
Okay.
Can I go in Cork? Can
Okay.
I go to that book? I have it written down which one, and cross-reference those names? I mean, I know that's where they're from, but I thought I might be able to get more information.
Question was about the McSweeneys and who was the other?
Murphys.
And the Murphys. Yes, it depends on where they are and where they were from. As far as looking at the surnames in particular, there is a book that I would recommend to folks. In particular is Edward MacLeisich's History of Irish Surnames, which is the green book in the back there, right next to Paddy's Lament. I would certainly look those up. That gives you some origins of the surnames as well. If you happen to know where they came from or any sort of history on them, take a look at some of my collection there as well. Ma'am, you had a question.
Yeah, I had 2 questions. One is you were talking about the naming conventions for the children.
Yes.
Who was named after whom. And the term brother, I wonder, like the second oldest
Yes.
in an Irish family can be called brother.
Okay.
Is that, I was wondering if that is sometimes confusing, or you can search on that, even though it's a very generic word, brother. Is that used in, no, it's not. It's not used
The question the lady asks is about the naming conventions with Irish, about the naming patterns and whether the name is about brother.
Yeah, it's not the name, but it's a reference to.
A reference to
second.
brother.
Yeah. Brother, somebody.
My first reaction to that was maybe that's just a term of endearment, a term of affection.
But it doesn't come up.
Yeah, that would be my,
Okay, fine. And
my-
then,
yeah.
for a variant name, for Meehan, Meehan,
yeah, okay.
could that come from Monahan or something like that? I'm just
The,
trying to think of-
the question is about
Keep
a
it
variant name from Meehan.
Meehan, yeah.
And that would be, the best person to ask would be my old neighbor, a great guy named Mike Meehan, who used to live across the street from me. But I moved away from him. I haven't talked to him in years. He used to be a big biker who did the Pan Mass Challenge years ago. But in John Grenham's, I spoke about the Irish ancestors, about looking at the names. He does have a variant spelling name on there. On Irish Ancestors site, he does have variant spelling ideas, because we all know that when you're conducting genealogy, it's a great skill to know how to misspell your name, right? Again, McClysick's book here on Irish surnames might give some nice stuff here on variant spellings of Meehan. I spell it Meehan. I think that's how my old neighbor Mike Meehan used to spell it as well. Okay. Karen?
I really want to put in a plug for libraries. You find one of those books that you think you want, we can get it. Well, usually we can't get that one you can't find. But,
Yeah, the FASTA,
so
yeah.
even some libraries will just Xerox that page.
Yeah.
So
If-
don't forget the library.
And the other option is if you have a smartphone, just go ahead and take a picture of the title page and order it on Amazon. Yeah. Sir?
Names like Shaughnessy, O'Shaughnessy.
Yeah.
So if you, that O
Yeah.
goes on and off again? or-
Yeah, excellent question. Maybe I should include that in the lecture, cut out some other stuff. A good piece of methodology would be, and the question was about the O's and the Macs, as far as methodology goes. If you're having a brick wall, put, a lot of the times those would get dropped, to sort of Americanize. Our ancestors would drop the O's or the Macs to anglicize to Americanize our names for helping in assimilation. So search under both if you're looking at a database or searching a microfilm or something like that. It's a good methodology to use. Thank you. Good question. Ma'am?
Like he's McLaughlin. There's
McLaughlin.
There's O'Laughlin, there's Laughlins,
Yeah.
there's Max, there's Mix
Yeah.
for Laughlin. My father told me we were Irish, and there's not another one in the book, any phone book local.
Oh, yeah.
My father's name. I went to Ireland, and my name was Scale, Kale with an S in front of it.
Yeah.
And there's a Scales Pharmacy, there's all kinds, so he was telling us the truth.
Yeah.
But, we never heard of it around here because of the drop in the S, and you hear a Kales.
You're talking McLaughlin?
No, she's talking about
I'm
scales.
talking about mine, I was Scahill, Scahil. There's Kales.
Scales. Oh, okay.
But I went to Ireland and I found Scale on pharmacies, on
Scale.
drugstores.
The scale
Scale
name.
with an S.
Oh, okay. I haven't studied that name at all.
Oh, we give you some homework.
Give you some homework. Okay.
That's what the teacher
She
was.
just mentioned McLaughlin. Why do we, some of us are MC, I'm MC, others are MAC.
Yeah.
Is that just the same thing?
A lot of the names in the records, and because many of our Irish immigrants were illiterate, the names are spelled phonetically.
Okay.
So, again, don't get offended if your name is spelled, many different ways. I mean, think about the many different ways that Riley can be spelled as an Irish name. Yeah. So it's, again,
But in other words, they
it
could
needs
be
to be
all the
creative.
same.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And the
not.
way they wrote them in that book, like we think the Irish are, because it's such a big population that came into where my grandparents came, Roxbury.
Yes.
Now, his came into New York,
Yes.
and we checked this all out here and gone over there. Basically, the only place we could find anything in the records was in the parishes.
Yeah.
I happened to have a birth certificate,
Okay.
which gave me where to go
Sure.
on a grandmother. But,
Absolutely. Yeah.
the websites that you put in here I found interesting. Give us a little homework.
Yeah. Absolutely. Can't sleep at night. rainy afternoon. There you are. Very good. I'll go 1, 2, and 3. Ma'am?
I'll try to make this quick. On my mom's side of the family, we have been able to go back pretty far, so that my siblings and I do have our Irish citizenship.
Okay, great.
So that was good. But on my dad's side of the family, we have a very mysterious grandfather who we haven't been able to find anything out about, except for the fact that he was born in New York. He was half Irish, half English. He died in 1919, possibly in London. Possibly he was a soldier. It was during the influenza epidemic.
Oh, yeah.
So I have his name, which is Guy Riley, and the Riley, I think, is British, not Irish.
Huh.
And we have his, I have from my dad's marriage certificate to my mom, his mother's name and father's name.
Mm.
And he was born in New York.
Mm.
But we always dead end there with this person.
Yeah.
I don't even know what borough, or every time I've tried to
Yeah.
find anything out, I don't even know where to start. So where would I start?
Okay.
Would I trace the mother because we have her? I mean, she remarried after he died. How do I
Yeah.
get to
The,
him?
the lady offers 1919 about a death in New York.
Either New York or London. There was a
Or
kind of
London in
mysterious, maybe
1919.
London.
Down on Chambers Street in New York, it was, and that marriage certificate is probably pretty reliable because the information is coming from the horse's mouth,
Right.
as opposed to a death certificate where the information can be sketchy. Yeah. Were they immigrant ancestors?
We don't know.
Okay.
We only know that about my mom's side, but about my dad's not.
Yeah. And they were Irish?
She was Irish, but he was Irish and English, so we think that maybe his father was British, his
Yeah.
mother was, so that would be a great, I mean, there's just so little
Yeah.
to go on.
Yeah, there's the New York City Archives, which I believe are on Chambers Street down there. And also, I believe I have a New York, there's a guide here I have, here it is. Finding Your Irish Ancestors in New York City, Joseph Buggy.
So
Maybe
you
want to
actually
take,
have to go to New York, basically.
maybe,
because
you can maybe write to some of the archives.
Okay.
There's also, I mentioned the New York Immigrant Irish Savings Bank, which is
Right.
a key Irish ancestry research here, again, ancestry.com
Okay.
as well.
It could be
If you could send me an
frustrating.
email, I've got some contacts down there who might be able to help out
Oh,
as
that'd
well.
be great.
There was 2 ladies, I promised. One, I'll get to, yeah.
I know one of the names that you mentioned in the Gaelic version of it was, I've seen it spelled Padraig, and that's how I've always mispronounced it.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine who is dual citizen and has studied the Celtic language and whatever, she's, no, that's spelled, it's pronounced, it's Poreg or O'Malley. I guess he's a well-known, he's someone who's done negotiations on behalf of the Irish, and he's actually speaking at the community college on the 30th at 1 o'clock.
Oh.
But he pronounces his name, is it Poreg? Is that, and I believe it's a version of Patrick. And I'm just curious.
Poreg?
Poreg, that's how she pronounced it for me. She
Probably the
corrected me. Am I right? Or is that correct?
Porrick.
Poreg.
That's why
For
they say-
Patrick?
That's why they
It's
say
spelled
Patty's Day with the K.
Padraic, and I always just,
Podrick.
yeah, but she pronounced it, Podrick?
Podrick.
Podrick.
And it's a she.
It's a he,
It's a he.
yeah.
Podrick.
O'Malley, I guess he's very well known, and I've seen his name before, and he's actually written a book.
This is why I keep this cheat sheet with me. It's the only cheat sheet I have for this whole lecture.
But if anyone's interested, he's.
Podrick.
at the-
Podrick.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he
it's a
pronounced it
variation of
Podrick.
Patrick.
It is a variation, okay, and he
Yeah.
pronounced it Podrick?
Podrick.
Podrick, okay. So, and he's
I got a
speaking
brother,
at Four
Patrick.
Seasons, I think 1 o'clock on.
Maybe I'll
March
start calling him
30th.
Podrick. Yeah, Podrick is a variation of Patrick, I guess, according to my cheat sheet.
One quick question and a comment. When you see like a series and it says Roman Catholic and it says D-O, is that, what does that mean, D-O? I mean, it's like the same?
I'm
You know,
sorry,
when you see like on a census list and they're trying to say the same thing, instead of like a dash, to say repeat, it would be D-O.
Like ditto?
Ditto.
Ditto.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, on a
And-
census list
And the other
for
thing
ditto.
is, my grandmother was born in Ireland, and when I was a kid, I sat down with her, and she gave me like her great-grandparents or something. And it was, her name was Mahan, but they were Micmahan, like way, way back. And I think that was part of the penal laws, taking those Mix and O's and things that sounded Irish away.
Hmm,
Because
yeah.
that happened,
Taking,
it happened in Ireland, it did not happen in the States.
yeah, oh, yeah.
So, I don't know why it was Micmahan, and then, 100 years later, everybody was Mahan.
Yeah. I don't believe, again, oral history, as far as the penal laws go, I don't believe that was a part of the penal laws.
Yeah,
I don't, from my reading of the penal laws,
okay,
I don't believe that changing names or suppressing names was a part of the penal law, the formal acts of parliament with the penal laws. Certainly voting was a part, suppressing of voting,
yeah,
suppressing of land,
yeah.
suppressing of, there was also, I remember hearing about suppressing of, they would brand Catholics on the cheek.
Oh, geez.
Some other stuff that's, other things that I had read about that I'm not gonna mention, that were nasty. But, yeah. But, again, the penal laws were lifted in 1829, so, they may have washed out since then. Think we're good?
Thank you.
We're good.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you all.
Some of you have relatives that aren't Irish or friends that, said, oh, we don't want to come to the Irish one because we're not Irish. On April 9th, we have another program where, I guess it's not going to be so specific.
Oh, no, no worries.
Okay, where he'll teach you the 5, ways to begin study, looking for your family. So, and this is brought to you by the Eastham Library, and I really thank you all for coming.
Please fill out your evaluation, love the feedback.